Hi, Juno News. Alexander Brown joining you for another week. I'm the director of the National Citizens Coalition. I am your host here of Not Sorry, airing 3 days a week. I'm a writer, a campaigner, a communicator, a podcaster. Thrilled to be with you. And while you are here, please take advantage of our terrific promo code, junonews.com/notsorry for 20% off. There's so much great reporting here, so many great hosts, everyone working on a big tent effort for common sense, and it means a lot to us to have you here. And I love reading your comments. Please leave them in the YouTube. I go through all of them, and I'm really enjoying hearing your perspective and your feedback on our episodes and our chats with our guests. And so, hey, topic of the day for us is that the budget passed. It passed narrowly, but passed nonetheless. By the slimmest of margins, Mark Carney's Liberals managed to push through and eke out their 2025 budget in the House of Commons late Monday, thanks only in large part to two NDPs who conveniently abstained from the final 170 to 168 vote. Two Conservatives also abstained, while the rest voted against. Conservative MP Matt Genero, who is resigning, who had previously announced that he was leaving in the spring, was not present. What that says about whether he sported it or not, your imagination can fill that void. Nor did he cast a vote. Conservative MP Shannon Stubbs was on approved medical leave after surgery and has since reiterated with remarks from her office with more information on that medical leave. Surely entirely legitimate. The Liberal budget passed, surviving the final hurdle after two earlier confidence motions on that budget bill. Tonight, the House of Commons has voted to pass Budget 2025. Prime Minister Mark Carney said in a post to X, using more of his team's trademark ChatGPT speak. It's time to work together to deliver on this plan, to protect our communities, empower Canadians with new opportunities, and build Canada strong. The truth of the matter is that the Conservatives and most common sense Canadians, for all their misgivings about the size and the scope of the deficit and the expansion of central planning in that Carney budget, they know, we know, that the modern polling dynamics that continue to see the Liberals popular with those who no longer wholly participate in the Canadian economy, who got in before housing went to the moon, and who don't interface with the public decline each and every day, they're still leaning firmly Liberal at present. If the budget failed to pass, there was a very good chance we're looking at a Liberal majority that's next to impossible to hold in check. On behalf of young and working Canadians, we can work with a minority, as frustrating as it is. What we couldn't work with is a return wholly and quickly to more of the same from 2015. So I'm counting on you, the viewer, to continue serving in unofficial opposition. It's a critical role to fill as our entrenched and out of touch interests seek the permission to again ignore you entirely. Let's get this country back on track. Let's talk to Wyatt Claypool. And first, a word from our sponsor.
This is a campaign called Unsmoke. Look, folks, it's time to modernize Canada's rules on nicotine. Alternatives to cigarettes, like heated tobacco vaping products and oral smokeless products, don't burn tobacco or produce smoke. They aren't risk-free, but the growing body of scientific evidence shows that they have the potential to be substantially less harmful than smoking. Despite this, Canadians are banned access to critical information and even some products. Nicotine pouches remain banned in convenience stores, and current laws ban communication about the risks of these products compared to cigarettes. It's unbelievable. The evidence is here. The tools exist. Canadians should have the freedom to know. You can learn more by visiting unsmoke.ca.
Wyatt Claypool joins the show. Wyatt is a popular YouTuber. He's with the National Telegraph and 1BC. He's got a great setup in his hotel room at present, which I saw in a tweet from the other night, where you're playing the classics on PlayStation. So you're a man after my own heart. Wyatt, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I refuse to buy just some simulator on a computer. I have to haul around the PS1 with me.
I have one of those simulators on the computer, so I understand it's better to play the OG. Wyatt, we could talk about the things that our audience would roll their eyes at, or we could talk about the budget, which passed by the slimmest of margins yesterday. Does this narrow victory signal early trouble for the Liberals, or did this break the way you expected?
I think it does signal early trouble, not because it almost didn't pass. I think everyone knew that it was going to pass.
Yeah.
This was procedural, and it would have been foolish for the opposition to actually unite and kill the budget and force a Christmas election. Like, who wants to be the Grinch forcing people to go and vote when they just want to be with their families. The thing is that all the parties were effectively positioning themselves on where they stand on this liberal government through the guise of voting on the budget. So we had 4 abstentions. Really, you just needed 2, and then Elizabeth May to go and vote with the Liberals, and the Speaker still could have tied the vote. So all those saying, oh my goodness, 2 conservative MPs betrayed us, it doesn't matter. And by the way, do you want the Liberals to win a majority government in a Christmas election? No. What the parties are doing is that the Conservatives are signaling, absolutely, we will take a spring 2026 election or sometime in 2026. The Bloc have set their narrative that this government doesn't care about Quebec enough, and the NDP are basically saying this party hates workers and they've gone too far, but because we're in a leadership race, we need to give them a little bit more rope before we come and hang them.
Yeah. Now, and no, that New Year's Day hangover coming out of a potential Carney majority, I think that would have been tough for the country to stomach. And I appreciate, for example, our friends in Alberta would sorely want an election right now because they're worried about keeping their, the blockades in BC not being still heard by Ottawa. But the dynamic here, the polling dynamic was difficult. It was a continuation in some ways of elbows up, where we're seeing the sort of over 55 voter age demographic is still overwhelmingly leaning liberal. Everyone else is like pretty popular. The Conservatives are pretty popular with. And so it was a be careful what you wish for. I think the Conservatives were adjusting for that and maybe feigning a little bit of gamesmanship. And who knows what's going to happen? What a showdown. But I don't think they wanted it. I don't think the Liberals wanted it. Now, how do you think the Conservatives are feeling right now? I mean, they're going to maybe, from a comms perspective, show that they're disappointed that they couldn't topple the government. But if you were them, would you be relieved to avoid a snap election that they might not have been at full strength for?
Oh yeah, I'd want some more time to prepare. Oftentimes, when
Yeah.
I start talking about politics with people, I start talking about it in military terms because you get some people on social media upset that they didn't topple the government and they didn't take the absolute first opportunity to fight the Liberals in a new election. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, guys, just because the general doesn't want to hard charge up a hill towards an encamped liberal opponent doesn't mean that they don't want to beat the Liberals. Really, what
Yeah.
Polyev is doing is he is not going for the short-term election, and instead he's, maneuvering around slower to go attack the Liberals in the medium term. Because again, you don't charge up a hill at your enemy, and that would be what a Christmas election would represent. What you would rather have, and I think the Conservatives probably feel at least relaxed right now, knowing that they can just do a bit of wait and see. They would rather a bad economic update come out or something to that nature, a big broken promise to have happened, and then they launch them into an election. Because the budget not passing, the Liberals could basically say, look at all these obstinate parties who won't even let us pass our first budget. They've been haranguing us to pass a budget for months, and now we finally do it, and they don't like it, even though we try to please everyone. Is the budget a hot mess? Yes, but the average voter doesn't really engage in politics in that granular of a level to understand all of the debt and the deficit in the budget and how they've miscategorized a bunch of operating expenses and as
Yeah.
infrastructure, pretend like they're investing. Do you think anyone knows that? I barely even recognize that happened. Like it even takes you as a commentator a while to really kind of dig into the budget to understand what it is.
Yeah, and it's not even as if they went through any sort of real effort to. I mean, their role with this budget in a minority parliament is like to make it work for everybody, is to bring people to them instead of using it kind of are you going to call our bluff or not? Like the numbers weren't good, but they knew that from a comms perspective, they could quickly turn to, yeah, see, we're trying, they're not listening, they're being disloyal at this moment of crisis. How could they not be on Team Canada? Meanwhile, Team Canada is as disparate and there's as much infighting as ever. The role of the NDP here, we had 2 in abstention. They have 23 million in debt as a party after Jagmeet Singh salted the earth for the former Party of the Worker and now the Party of the Teachers Lounge. Are they capable of showing a backbone going forward here? Do you see this as like a smart strategic move to buy themselves time? Are they capable of getting it together federally? Or I guess the worry would be among some, is this the start of more of the same, of just endlessly propping them up?
No, I don't think it is. I think that if it was Jagmeet Singh, he would have just had every single NDP MP vote for the budget and
Yeah.
signaled that, okay, well, we've gotten enough out of this thing to keep them going, even if he got absolutely nothing. I think that the funny thing is, this cohort of NDP is far more left wing than the previous crew. The
Yeah.
ones that are remaining are really the hyper progressives occupying these deep urban ridings. And so I do think that they're slightly crazy. It's like if the Democratic Party in the US was only run by the squad, that's what the
Yeah.
NDP is right now. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how much debt they have. I think they do have less than 23 million now because there is a rebate that all the parties end up getting for their spending and whatnot. But the party doesn't even need that much cash in order to double their seats, because all you have to do is defend 7 seats, and then you just need to go and try and maybe target 7 more or a few more than even that.
Yeah.
But the leadership race should be helping them out with their spending, with their money problems, because every single candidate that gets into the race has to put up hundreds of thousands of dollars to enter. And then at the same time, just having a new leader in general is going to massively increase their donations, especially if Mark Carney ends up ticking off the NDP voters that he needed in the last election. If they start going back over to the NDP and the donor engine of the NDP is restored, they may actually be a threat to the Liberals again.
Yeah, and on the NDP front, I mean, there are those who like to say, I think there were so many lousy debriefs coming out of the election, but there are those who like to say that the CPC blew a 20 point lead, like they were the Falcons against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But they went from 43% to 41%. That's historic high to still historic high. Obviously, conservatives.
You don't measure also polls from the very highest point to the very lowest point that you can find.
Yeah.
They were never 20 points ahead. They were probably like 13 or something
Yeah.
like that. That's probably a more reasonable lead for the conservatives. It's just in the absolute dog days of the Liberal administration. Yeah, you had some shock polls that came out where it was looking so bad that they were behind the NDP. If an election happened, you would have had the kind of the rally around Trudeau effect, and he probably would have been able to tighten it up even to 5 or 8 points or something like that. It would have gotten destroyed, but he would have been able to tighten it up, because politics is boring and people tend to default back to their boring political opinions.
Yeah, and the dynamics of polling too. I don't think the general public totally understands whether it's a push poll or something else. It's like you're having a bad day, you've read some bad news, and then someone calls you and goes like, "Hey, isn't this bad?" Like, it's like, yeah, you're gonna say, what you're being sort of probed to give them back there now. But the conservatives would surely greatly benefit from the NDP getting off the mat. Like, do you think that now they're crazier? I guess that's the concern. It is just the watermelon, crew. It is just the Kafia crew. Like, are we trending towards a two-party system, or do you think that they can cobble together, 12 to 15 seats from just being crazy in urban centers?
I genuinely do, because there is like a demographic of voters that this appeals to, and in places like Vancouver and Victoria, Toronto, and whatnot, there is people who vote for this stuff. Winnipeg as well, where Leah Gazan, probably the craziest MP in the entire country, is.
Yeah.
And I think that this is mostly going to be good for the Conservatives if they end up, getting up off the mat. The problem for the end, really the only person that the Conservatives wouldn't want to become the NDP leader is Rob Ashton, since he actually does represent, whether I agree with him or not, more of a worker focus.
Yeah.
He respects blue collar people, and that's kind of the John Horgan, Wab Canoe, or Jack Layton energy that would probably help out the federal NDP actually win back places like Windsor West. Hey, I don't want them to win back Windsor West, which is great because Heather McPherson and Avi Lewis are more likely to win, and those are your downtown hyper progressive Hamas supporters.
Yeah, they'll win, out by UBC. They'll take Kensington Market in Toronto, but
Yeah, they'll win Hastings.
Yeah, they'll win Naomi Klein's support that they already had. But so why the budget greatly skimps on housing solutions? That's you're a young guy. We have a crisis clearly tied to mass immigration and exorbitant development costs. The conservatives claimed to aim to build 2.3 million homes. They have, in theory, better immigration targets that they're advocating for. The liberals presented a kind of side dish to the budget, with what sure look like sort of window dressing changes to immigration. Like, why do you think Poilievre's policies on say housing, where it's more about sort of cutting red tape, would better effectively tackle the affordability crisis than these vague efforts and these like really unencouraging signs from the liberals that they're coming nowhere close on housing or understanding the root cause of the housing crisis?
Well, they did end up slashing TFWs in the budget by
Yeah,
about half, which is a big signal that people who've been advocating for lower immigration are winning. Poilievre, who I would say actually kind of had a disappointing immigration stance during the election, where it
yeah,
was, it's 100,000 less people, permanent residents, than what the liberals were saying. But, come on, it has to be so much more of a gap that people notice. And since the election, he has taken the stance that we want net negative migration. Perfect. That's great. That's all I need to hear on that.
yeah,
But with housing, the thing with the liberals is that weren't they the ones who just had to cancel a tree planting program? They couldn't even plant a tree, and now
yeah.
they're going to attempt to actually build substantial amounts of makeshift units in order to house more people. I think this is going to be one of those things that in the next 6 months or a year, whether we have an election before then or not, you're going to have a lot of, like, I think the conservatives are going to have a strong ability to start badgering the liberals about having probably never built a unit, or they only have a handful of units built. Because if they're making prefabricated houses and you can't build a lot of them, that's kind of on you, because that sounds like something that nobody could screw up. It's idiot proof being able to put up prefab houses, but I think we're going to find that the liberal bureaucracy is going to prevent them from succeeding.
Yeah, and I think there's only going to be like 4,000 of those prefab houses too, as if that's going to fit like we're still welcoming in like north of 2 million people over the next 3 years, including temporary streams, and that's if they even stick to that. So where are we
Maybe,
going?
maybe this is going to keep people from coming to Canada when they realize that the housing options look like a carnival concession stand.
Yeah, no, it's like that portable that you used to be stuck at in elementary school with it on a sweltering hot day. And looking at some of the green initiatives and the stranglehold on our energy industry, the liberals commit vaguely to a balance of climate targets they've never hit in the budget and lessening the emissions cap. But the bad bills and the picking more losers than winners, it remains in place. The carbon tax has just been shifted to the business side. If you are the conservatives, so how would you balance communicating the Canadian public's want for environmental stewardship with communicating like the need that like we have to get projects to market, and more of the same isn't going to cut it right now?
The I would actually say the answer on having to balance trying to get the economy kick-started and balancing environmental stewardship. Honestly, I don't even think you have to do the balancing of environmental stewardship,
Yeah,
simply because I think Canadians are so sick of the liberal policies that they're not really looking for Poilievre or the conservatives to say anything, about environmental conservation. Now that's already always still in their platform they always speak on, and that there's like, a certain world where it's important to speak out on that stuff. But I think that really on this issue, they just need to rip apart all of the liberal like regulations. Just keep targeting them as the actual woes of the economy, not any
yeah,
sort of thing to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with domestic policy. And the great rhetorical line, because they used to say with Justin Trudeau, oh, it's the Trudeau Singh government, it's the liberal NDP government. This is the liberal Green government. They bent over backwards to get Elizabeth May's vote on the budget. They literally promised to keep going with the Paris climate targets
you could
in
have just
order to
bought
get
her a
Elizabeth
drink
May
and she
on board.
yeah, you could have just bought her a drink and she would have said yes. So.
Yeah, you could have gotten it at any local pharmacy that's around you. You don't even need to actually go to a liquor store, apparently. But
Yeah,
anyways, yeah, you could easily this is going to be I think this is going to be a good rhetorical line for the conservatives, that they actually partnered up with May. They kicked the NDP out of the bed and they brought in Elizabeth May's Green Party to dictate their environmental policy for the next year, or for basically their entire term, in order to keep her on side.
yeah, yeah. Strange bedfellows. Now you're a young guy. You're huge on YouTube. I think, and I've been talking to folks on the inside, and we all have our sources, and we all like I would say the blunt aspect of conservative communications. You have to be a feisty opposition, but I think there's this sort of undeniable reality that our over 55 voters in that key demographic, they seem to be put off by tone. They seem to want to tone police the young when they get all uppity and complain about the conditions of their captivity. How would you, or would you, strike a better balance as the opposition, trying to maybe appear more stately while also being critical? Like, would you change anything, or would you just accept that you've got your people, you're popular with your people, and not everyone's going to like you?
Genuinely, I think they actually just have to kind of stick to their guns.
Yeah.
The conservatives, as much as people talk about how much the liberals do well with over 55 voters, they are starting to slowly come down with that demographic. It's holding pretty well, but again, we haven't had as much bad news hit the headlines about this liberal government yet. And obviously, it's very early going, and the media has always been allies of the liberals, so they tend to like to announce all the things, or report on all the things the liberals are announcing with no follow-up on whether or not that stuff's actually going to happen or not. But the conservatives do really well with middle-aged voters. A voter who is above the age of 30 but below the age of 55 is the key demographic for the Conservative Party, and it also happens to be the largest portion of the Canadian population. And so the Conservatives are doing better with 18 to 30 voters as well, 18 to 29, because they've done much better with especially younger men. But at the end of the day, it's the kind of family demographic vote they're doing really well with. The people who the kids are still in the house, those are the people who vote conservative. And I think if they do want to win voters back who are above the age of 55, it has less to do with tone. I think it has to do with policies. I've told even members of the conservative team that what you, in a certain sense, how you win back a lot of, especially women over the age of 55, run a soft pro-life policy. Because more than just marketing yourself as shiny, happy people, you actually have to go after the liberals as being pretty nasty when you actually dig into their policies. These are people who all universally voted against upgrading criminal sentencing for murdering a pregnant woman. Oftentimes, you have to go after a voter's stomach when it comes to voting for the other guy and exposing that they have some very immoral positions. So going more on letting basically biological men ruin women's sports, going after the liberals' absolute zero restrictions on abortion type policies, including not even protecting pregnant women from crime. That's the stuff where if you go to older voters, that can kind of clue them back into, yeah, these guys are not the ones fighting against Trump and the evil orange man. These are the people who actually have these far left, crazy social opinions, and they want your daughter's basketball league ruined.
Yeah, think of the protecting the family unit, crime and safety, issues of order. It's all right there. Wyatt, tell us a little bit about how things are going at 1BC right now.
Oh, everything's always chaotic at the legislature. I can actually
No.
tell you this rumor right now. So apparently there's going to be another new political party at the legislature. This is all rumors at the moment, but it looks like Eleanor Sturko and Amelia Boltby might be starting their own party, and I invite them to do it. There needs to be another center-left party that's going to hurt the NDP, but at 1BC, we're just hard charging on all the policies we care about, like ending DRIPA and UNDRIP and all the indigenous type restrictions that are making it impossible to actually build anything in this province.
Impossible to build. Homeowners are deeply concerned about, whether they are even keeping their fee simple. Wyatt Claypool, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.